Now, let's get into the other big story from Wednesday night, that being the Blood and Gut show from Dynamite, which wasn't a one-match show. I mean, it was, but the entire second hour, not the entire 2 hours, was devoted to the Blood and Guts main event. So let's just start there. We won't even go match by match. Let's start with the big and then work our way down here. The Blood and Guts main event itself, Pinnacle, Inner Circle, they made this out to be a huge deal. We're 40 minutes out from the rating dropping for the show, so if we're still on the line, we'll talk about it. If not, we'll talk about it over text. But I assume this does a big rating because there was nothing on TV last night, no big holiday aside from Cinco de Mayo, and they've been building this up for a while, so this should be, I thought this was a really good match. It should be a big rating, but yourself, Mr. Marceau, you had some, praise for it, you had some criticism for it. Break it down for me. What were your thoughts in the Blood and Guts main event from Wednesday night?
I thought it was fine. We discussed this via text and before we started recording here. I thought it was fine. I thought Dax and Sammy killed it starting off the match. Got juice right away. Had a nice little one-on-one matchup. And then, Sean Spears comes in, and I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Nothing against Sean Spears. I just have no interest in him at all. And then I'm trying to think who came in next. I don't know, Ortiz or one of them. And then it just, then that's when the commercials started. So I'm like, okay, they're just going to get one in. It's fine, Cash comes fucking steaming in like a bat out of hell. Thought he was going to hurt himself. But I'm like, okay, fine. Then Wardlow's about to come in. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's going to be great. Go to commercial. I'm like, okay. Then they come out of commercial, and Hager comes in. I'm like, all right. And then MJF comes in, and then they go to another commercial. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, how many commercials are you going to get? And then, MJF says to Jericho, when you get in, we're going to kick your ass. And then he gets in, and they just split apart. They get on each side, and then they just run like they're, playing dodgeball. They're running in the circle to grab the balls in the middle. So I died laughing at that. And then, they went to commercial again when they somehow got out of the cage. I don't know how they got out of the cage. But, there was during picture, and then, they fought on top, whatever, and then I surrender, and then he just tossed him through right off the cage on a crash pad. I was just like, yikes. I think the commercials for me killed it. I think if you, watch, Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, and they had, 3 commercials in the middle of it, you'd have been like, it was fine, but, it just wasn't great. I just think they should have saved it either for the pay-per-view or they just should have trimmed some of the fat off the show. The show was fine for what it was. It was a good show, but, there was a couple things, segments that ran a little bit, they could have trimmed some time off of, or, I don't know. I just think the commercials for me just killed it for me. I don't watch picture-in-picture. I have a 60-inch TV. I only just watch a little blurb in the corner of 14 inches. I have better things to do in my time, so those are just zip through it, so it is what it is. I just think if there was no commercials, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
Dude, as someone who watches these shows usually on DVR, I never watch the commercials. So I don't give a fuck if there's picture-in-picture, picture-in-picture, or no picture. I don't watch any of it. I just skip right through it. So I asked you beforehand.
That's what I do.
Yeah, exactly. So how the hell did they get to the top of the cage was my question. Because I flipped to one of the commercials, and I'm not to blame here. I should not be subjected to watching every minute of the action, even in commercial, because you can't hear it anyway. You can barely see it. So, even when I'm covering this shit, I never watch that garbage, because you can barely see it and you can't hear it anyway, so what's even the point? To me, that's it's not canon, so to speak. It doesn't matter. So, I wouldn't do any big developments during commercial, because it's not like WWE used to do that thing back in the day where, you could watch the shows on their app or something, so it would kind of be like an incentive to watch the show via the app. AEW doesn't have that. I think you can watch it without commercials on Fight if it airs, elsewhere, in the world. In England, I don't know if they have commercials, but we do, so I don't know. It's a weird problem. That being said, though, I thought the overall match was good. The commercials were an issue, and it did hurt the flow, absolutely. And I said this to you before, but I think the reason why they didn't do it on the pay-per-view is because, yes, ideally, yes, you could do it on pay-per-view, and I realized when we were speaking earlier, they did do the Stadium Stampede match on the fucking pay-per-view last year, and they devoted, a lot of time to that. So, you could devote a good chunk of time to, doing a match on a pay-per-view. This is why they don't do, Iron Man, an hour-long Iron Man matches on pay-per-views, because it takes up a whole hour of the pay-per-views for whatever company it is. That's why I don't really do it. And if you do something like that, you kind of have to trim down the rest of the card. I know in 96 when they did it with Hart and Michaels, they had a 5 or 6 match card or whatever it was. They would never do that in 2021, whether it's WWE or AEW or whatever. specifically when it comes to their biggest show of the year, that being Double or Nothing, and this company has a tendency to squeeze on as many matches as possible into a very short time window. So I don't see that happening. I don't think they would have done that. I mean, I guess you could have, but they wanted to make it more special. They wanted to pop a rating. Hopefully they did. I mean, people listening have a better idea than we do right now. But other than that, though, again, the match itself, I thought they did a good job with the brutality. They incorporated the blood. If that's not your thing, this probably wasn't for you, but it's called Blood and Guts, so I kind of expected that. The crowd was loud. I thought the Pinnacle winning was the right call. I thought it could go either way, and it would have been fine with the Inner Circle winning. The spot at the end, it wasn't that Jericho should have killed himself doing it, obviously. It was the fact that they shot it terribly. Like, it should not have been shot the way that it was shot. And WWE makes production errors all the time due to Kevin Dunn. But, AEW should have known better here. That just looked terrible. But I do like, in theory, though, the idea of Jericho being written off the show. So where do you think this leaves the Inner Circle? Do you think Jericho's disappearing for a little while? I mean, again, the bump looks so bad that if he popped up next week, I wouldn't be upset. Like, he's perfect. Like, Eddie Kingston showing up after Revolution was perfectly fine because he obviously wasn't hurt by it. That was a different kind of botch. This just didn't look great. Do you think Jericho takes some time off and we get MJF and Sammy Guevara in the meantime? Or where do you think we go from here? Because I would assume you got to get the Pinnacle or at least MJF on the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, maybe do him and Sammy in the interim. Or the thing is, I just don't like the issue. Like the feud, was fine. It's fine for what it was, but this is what I fear. It's like the Blood and Guts is supposed to be like the end all be all. So are they just gonna do MJF and Sammy in the interim and then bring Jericho back and continue it? I don't know. I would just do him and Sammy just to get on the card. But I don't need to see Jericho and MJF again. But that's probably where they're gonna go to again. But
I don't even know what's accomplished with that. Just because I don't know, dude. I just feel like with something like that, it's an issue because we already saw the match previously. We already got to the Full Gear and MJF won. So it's not even like Jericho won and MJF gets his win back. What's accomplished from MJF winning again or beating him again, especially after winning, especially after already beating him at Full Gear and beating him inside Blood and Guts. What's really accomplished there, Yeah,
because if they don't do him and Sammy, what do you really do with him next? He already they're gonna go back to him and Jungle Boy again, like they did that last.
They did that a lot last year, yeah.
And yeah, that was at Double or Nothing last year. Are they gonna do him in pockets? I hope not. They don't really have a ton of heels. You're not gonna do him and Hangman. That story's he's already busy doing something else. I'm assuming Christian Cage they'll probably do him and Hangman versus Team Taz at Double or Nothing. So he's tied up. You're not gonna do him and Moxley or him and Kingston. They're tied up right now. If anything, it's just some underneath guy unless you do him and Sammy, which I just feel like if you do him and Sammy, I guess he could be fighting for Jericho's honor for Jericho since he got hurt. But if you beat Sammy, are they gonna do him and Jericho again? You shouldn't be losing to Sammy. So I don't really know. I feel like they kind of sometimes do this, that they just book themselves into a hole and they're just oh, we're trying to do this now, and I just don't really know what to do at this point. You're not gonna do him and Pac. Pac's not even really a babyface. He's more of a heel. And no, I don't know. I guess you do him and Sammy, or hopefully they just do that and just move on. But then what do you do with the whole faction at that point? What are they gonna face? The fucking Hardy compound? Come on.
The Hardy compound. Yeah.
Jericho and Matt Hardy facing fucking terrible factions against each other.
Yeah, but the problem here is that you build up one heel stable, and then the other top stable in the company is another heel stable. So who do they feud with? Are they going to feud with the Elite? That's heel versus heel, so they wouldn't do that, would they? I think the Pinnacle should have won here, but wouldn't it have made more sense to have the Inner Circle win and build up Jericho? Because Jericho is, again, he's established. He doesn't need to win really at all. But then you could build the Jericho and Omega 3 because they never had the rubber match. I feel like that would be that would make a little more sense, would it not?
It would, but at this point,
at this point, Jericho and Omega's a joke.
At this state, yeah, exactly. At this state, I think they're especially. I think that it's that ship sailed. That ship sailed a while ago. I don't think they'd go back to Jericho and Omega anytime soon because I just don't think that's what the story is at this point. Like I said, Jericho's means little to nothing since he lost the belt. His fucking AEW career has been a fucking joke. I mean, like you said, I couldn't even tell you last time he won on pay-per-view. I mean, he's been in weird feuds. It's kind of like Cody. Cody kind of just been all over the place. So
Cody's been even worse. Oh my god.
I mean, he's been even worse. He's been like 18 million feuds. I mean, he just goes week to week to week. It's just all over the place. But I would just do Sammy and MJF, I guess, in the interim. But then from there, I don't really know what to do with them, like you said, because they're not going to feud with like the next biggest faction that they could face is the Elite, and the story's just not there, and they're both heels. I mean, it doesn't really make much sense, but
yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think overall, again, I liked Blood and Guts. I thought it was a really good match. I had some criticisms of it. I think we all did. But I think overall it was a very good match, and they delivered on the stipulation. I think it was more of the original War Games than what we've seen in NXT, but I enjoy the NXT versions as well. So if they can kind of, whenever they do this again, and I'm sure they will down the road, hopefully they can kind of work on some of those criticisms, then all will be fine. But I thought this was a great main event, though.